Welcome in to another edition of the Game Time TBA podcast. I'm your host, Bryant Graham, and I've got our co-host here with us today, Dustin Watts. Welcome, buddy.
Man, Bear, it's a pleasure to be on here. Seeing the videos you and T have been putting out, and honestly, it warms my heart. Y'all have been talking sports since childhood, since we're out in the backyard throwing wiffle balls and tackling each other, just throwing the ball around. So, seeing y'all put this together and hearing what y'all have to say and kind of this professional format, it puts a different perspective on it. So, Bear, I appreciate you inviting me on, and happy to discuss the CFP here with you tonight.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, it's crazy to think back on all the memories. Sports has been a stronghold and something that's been a big part of our friendship. For those that don't know, we have a fantasy football league. Uh, in regards to the NFL, where we meet up every year and draft live in person, as long as you can make it. We've been doing that for over a decade now. And, our love for sports, brings us together. So obviously this podcast is all about mainly college football at the moment, but, we're going to talk about some college hoops as that kind of gets into motion and, and probably, whatever you guys want to hear, NFL, it's a big sports podcast. So whatever everybody wants to listen to. But yeah, today we're gonna get into the college football playoff bracket. As far as our predictions, kind of break that down a little bit. We'll probably get Troy on with a little bit of the analysis on the Alabama Oklahoma game or any other games to come. Specifically, maybe even whether it's Ohio State, Georgia. Whenever it gets to the semifinals, we'll probably break down a couple of those games. But Dustin and I are going to break down our predictions. And Dustin will probably, before I put the overall predictions in, we'll kind of want to get your take. What are you looking forward to as far as this 12 team model? Do you think it's the right amount of teams? What's your thought on expansion or kind of where we are comparatively to where we've been?
You know, Great question. When they came out with the 14 playoff, everybody was excited for it, pumped for it, but in the same breath, they were ready for it to expand already. We're at 12 teams now. I know people are talking about expanding to 14 teams, 16 teams, 18 teams. I think it could go either way in terms of will it be more beneficial for the college football playoffs as an entity. But you look at March Madness, look how many teams they have, and every year you're going to have teams that are just on the outside looking in. There's always going to be those arguments for those teams right on the edge. I don't see anything wrong with a 12th team playoff. I think it's fine. You obviously got Notre Dame this year. Their fan base feels like they certainly had their repertoire to get in this year. Is pretty much essentially Miami and Bama that got in over them, and that's the way it shakes out. Goes back to it. I know it's a couple of years ago, smaller playoff field, but there was a playoffs where you kept out an undefeated ACC conference championship or conference championship team. So it's going to shake out that way one way or another. I'd say what I'm looking forward to the most this year. I don't know. Last year with the expanded playoffs, it was something incredible where it was the number 5 team, the number 8 team, the number 9 team. Those were the ones that were making the final pushes, the final stretches. I think is Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think they were 8-9 in the
Yeah.
90s. So now we're looking at this college football playoff, and I don't know if we're going to get the same amount of upsets that we did last year. Probably wouldn't bet on that, but I'm excited to see what teams are going to be able to put on the field for sure.
Yeah, and I think comparatively to last year, that you referenced 2023, that Georgia team was 12-1. I mean, they got left out too. So I mean, really good Georgia team that ended up spanking Florida State. But this year comparatively to last year, I think I'm looking forward to the fact that the it's not the four highest conference champions that get the buys. It's just the top four teams. I think that's going to make it a little bit. I think it's going to make it a little bit more impactful for the second round going into the semifinals and championship. Just because last year Boise State getting a first round bye. I mean, they were a good team. They were a top 10 team, but when Penn State went to play them, I mean, Penn State was the better football team. This year, you're going to have, you know, whenever these first round teams win and go play the second round, they're going to be underdogs more than likely to those teams that had a bye. So it's a little bit more deserving, I would say. Kind of like Arizona State last year. Yeah, Texas had to go play that extra game, come in, but Texas was still the favorite over Arizona State, and I think they were ranked number 3. But they had the number 5 seed. So I think it'll be a little more interesting this year. We'll probably have some compelling quarterfinal games as well as semifinals. Semifinals were awesome last year, but I think we'll have some really good quarterfinal games and a couple great first round games. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think, I was worried about the 12-team model, but with the era of the transfer portal, NIL, things have kind of balanced out a little bit. So, you know, back in the day, you had about 3 to 5, maybe 6 teams that really had a chance. Now you've got closer to 10 teams that realistically have a chance because things are a little bit level. So, it'll be interesting. And I think if you go to 14 or 16, I think it would be important that kind of have like a double bye system. Kind of like the SEC basketball they have, like the 9 seed would play the 16. And if they won that game, then they would play the 8, and they would kind of, these teams, I think you got to give teams like Tulane and James Madison a chance, or maybe one of these, if a Duke would have made it, they're still an underdog. You got to give them a chance. But I think it would be nice to kind of have that extra round to where one of the last teams in can play those, and then you can get to the real bracket, and then you get to what we have this weekend, except instead of Tulane and James Madison, you might have a Notre Dame or a Vandy or a Texas playing or a BYU, and it makes for some more compelling matchups. Or you get Tulane and James Madison, and you got to watch an amazing upset, in round 1. So that's what I would be looking into. Hopefully they don't do the 1 versus 16, but either way, love where
Yeah.
it's heading. You just don't want to expand too much. I think they've got a sweet spot right now, and you don't want to jump the gun.
It's a good argument that I've been seeing around. Don't think it's going to gain much traction. I don't really see it realistically happening, but just saying seed the teams as they're ranked, top 12 seeds. But I go back and I look and I see these group of 5 teams. Man, the American Conference this year, they were stout. G5. So you're in Power 4, you're not looking at those teams. Personally, I wouldn't look at the teams. I work at USF, and I've been obviously watching them pretty closely. And this conference was competitive this year. And then you come and look at the SEC. The SEC hired 2, 3 coaches out of the American Conference to come coach SEC teams. So it's going to be that argument of are we going to give this G5 team or 2 G5 teams kind of a token spot in the playoffs when they really don't deserve it? Because what, Tulane's ranked 20, and JMU's 25.
Yeah.
So I mean, certainly an argument there. And when we get a little later in, we're showing our predictions. I don't have either of them winning. But at the same time,
Shocker.
all the G5 schools, man, they're gonna be tuning in because they want that Cinderella story. And you're gonna have college football fans around the country tuning in because they want that Cinderella story.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the legitimacy of earning a playoff berth. It's hard for me to make that argument that a Tulane or a JMU should be in over a Vandy or Notre Dame. I don't think I can actually make that argument.
Deserving was, yeah. And like I was saying, honestly, it might play out well if you go to a 14 or a 16, and like I said, you kind of have like a round earlier where those teams can play in, so to speak. It's the playoffs, but kind of like March Madness, they kind of have that first 4. where they have those bubble teams. Essentially, the bubble teams play the like a 500 Texas squad out of the SEC plays one of those teams that won their conference, but was like one of the worst conference champs. I think something like that in a way to where one of these bubble teams that didn't get in this year plays the Tulane and James Madison. That kind of might help it a little bit because it's the first round. It's one of the bubble teams anyways. Just let them go out and play and show that they deserve to be in. I think that would kind of be a way to at least feel a little bit better comparatively to Oregon essentially getting a bye themselves by playing James Madison.
Yeah.
So, but Dustin, before I pull the predictions up, I want to ask, and not necessarily spoiling anything, on how far deep you have some of the first round teams going, but who, in your opinion, has the best chance out of the um, first round teams to make a run to the national championship? Not necessarily win it, but just to get to the national championship game out of that first round. Whether it's Oregon, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, A&M, Miami, the G5 teams, but probably not the answer there. But out of those teams,
See,
who's got the best chance you think to make a run? Not that they're going to, but who's set up?
I I'm really liking Oregon. I'm liking Oregon where they're sitting. I am. I know they've got some injury concerns, but just the pace that they bring to the field, they're Oregon is Oregon. They're always going to have their defensive concerns.
Mhm.
But you go back and look at their record, look at their scores. 4 games, 5 games, they were close, yeah.
Yeah.
But other games they're pulling away. Yeah, once we get a little more into how the bracket plays out, I didn't know how far I wanted to take Oregon, but man, I'm feeling pretty good about them.
Yeah, and that's a great pick. There are definitely a lot of favorites in people's brackets. I'm an Alabama fan. I am, just to pick a different pick other than Oregon because I do, highly favor them. I am going to say Alabama has a great opportunity if they can get past Oklahoma. Now, I could very well see Oklahoma winning this football game. It's at home. Alabama's had some struggles in the month of November, but if you go back to October when Alabama, had that run where they beat Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee,
Historic
historic
four
run,
wins.
historic run. They were
Yeah,
in the top four for the longest time, and really in a lot of ways outplayed Oklahoma, other than protecting the football, and that's what cost you the game. I mean, Oklahoma forced those turnovers; they deserved to win, but Alabama could have won that football game, and Alabama's got the talent. I think the problem in November was all the injuries to the offensive line, to the tailbacks. Josh Cuevas, the tight end, is out. He might be back this week, which could be a huge contributor because he's basically Ty Simpson's safety blanket. I think it's going to be hard to get past Oklahoma, but if they can get past Oklahoma, you get another 11 or 12 days rest going into the Rose Bowl, and you're going to take on Indiana, who is one of the best teams, one of the best coach teams, one of the best disciplined teams. They're talented, but you could argue that out of the top four teams, they're the least talented. Maybe they're a little bit more talented than Texas Tech, but that's debatable. Texas Tech really went into the portal this year, and they've got a talented defense. Um, so Alabama, I mean, you probably, if you had to pick Ohio State, Georgia, or Indiana, you'd probably rather play Indiana. Um,
yeah.
but and then if you get past them, then it's wide open at that point. So I would say I'd have them as my pick to be set up the best to make a run. But Oregon's a solid pick.
Yeah, and I'd say this. So I'm an Auburn fan. Went to Auburn. I graduated from there. I'll say, Bama fans, take heart. Where DeBoer is right now in his first 2 seasons, he actually has a better record than Saban did. in his first 2 years. So don't really like going on record and saying that, but I've got a lot of good Bama buddies, and I give them hell about it. But looking at it, it's like, oh, I hope we're not going here again.
Yeah. And hey, Auburn, I think they made the right hire. Obviously, you're a USF guy. It's kind of cool that you have one team that you root for. Your coach leaves, but guess what? He's going to your other program. So
Yeah.
I think they might have a chance to get here in a couple years, man. After what Golish did at South Florida.
Couple years. And yeah, just one quick thing on that. As much hate as Hugh Freeze can have where he was on the sidelines, play calling, all that, Hugh Freeze did an incredible job building Auburn's roster. We've got a lot of talent. I know there's been a lot of news about potential players hitting the portal. And when Alex Golish came in, he said his top priority was keeping the roster as much as he could. But in this transfer portal area, who knows how that's going to shake out. But yeah, we'll see. I think it's going to be a lot more competitive, on the east side of the state instead of the west side of the state dominating every year.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, I'm gonna pull up here your predictions. You want to walk us through those real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oregon over JMU. Hate to discount any team. Hate to say it's going to be an easy win, but Oregon's got a ton of momentum coming off the season. Moore I think he's been pretty lights out this year. JMU, I like them. They're a good team. They're a solid team. They're sound fundamentally, coached greatly. But when you do step up into that P4 type competition, you're going to have to bring more than that. You're going to have to bring the physical stature. You're going to have to bring the strength. You're going to have to bring the stamina. And we've seen Oregon beat P4 teams by more than 3 touchdowns this year. And with that game, I just don't feel like I need to say a whole lot more.
Yeah.
That's just it. I do have Bama over Oklahoma. I think FBI has it. Bama 50.8% as the predicted winner. I'm just going to pull out the tried and true. It's hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. Bama knows what it's about. They went through those injury struggles that reared its ugly head when they were playing against Oklahoma. And I think when DeBoer comes in, he knows what the game script is going to be looking like. I don't think he's going to have any issues with adjustments. I mean, Ty, he's been playing some awesome ball. I mean, like you mentioned earlier in October, he has that it factor. He has it. And, Mateer is also solid. He's a great quarterback, but I have this one close. I think it's going to be a field goal game at the end of it.
Yeah.
Going over to the Ole Miss Tulane game, I wanted so bad to pick Tulane. I did. Main reason I couldn't is because it's at home in an SEC environment. Yeah, I know Lane Kiffin's gone, but his team's still there. They brought up Lane Kiffin's number 2, who's actually going to LSU. He's going to be coming back to coach through the CFP. And, when they first made that announcement, I'm like, I've heard of him, but does he have anything? And then when they announced it, all the players were super hyped. And it just kind of brought me back to the time when Cadillac Williams was coaching against Alabama in the Iron Bowl. And everybody thought that was going to be a blowout game. And, we kept that game close. Real close. We almost could have won it. But yeah, I mean, looking over it, it's the same thing with Oregon and JMU. You're just going to have the physicality of an SEC team over a G5 team. Any coach is going to have to come in. John Summerall, man, incredible coach. There's a reason he's going to be an SEC coach next year.
Yeah.
He can put together a strategy with the best of them. And he's not going to be coaching against the best of them, but he's coaching a group of players that are not SEC players or Big Ten players or Big 12 or ACC players. It's just a different ballgame.
Yeah.
Miami over A&M. I know the seeding says Miami is lower than A&M, but this season I've seen what Miami can do. I've seen who they played against. I've seen them be in bad situations and obviously lose a couple. But I've seen the tenacity that they bring onto the field, and I've seen A&M play as well. And really, it's not even a whole lot about A&M's loss against Texas. Like, yeah, if A&M didn't lose against Texas, they'd have the first round bye. They'd be situated a lot better, and maybe the odds would be better. But even if they did have that bye, I'd probably still have A&M losing their first game. I think I don't want to say they catch a lot of breaks because that's not it. That's not how football works. But I think when A&M is in a fourth quarter situation, 6 minutes left, are they going to have what it takes, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, which they are stacked, they're stout, they've been talked about as being incredible. Are they going to have what it takes to go up against this high octane Miami offense? More times than not, I'm going to take the defense over the offense, but this time around, I'm taking Miami.
Yeah, smart. A lot of people are picking Miami. Yeah.
All right, we head into the quarterfinals.
Quarterfinals, yeah.
Okay, Oregon over Texas Tech. Man, Texas Tech has surprised the heck out of me this year. And it must have been going into Thanksgiving, and I was going through looking through the rankings. So I'm like, Texas Tech, are we back in 2009? Why are they in the rankings? Then I go back, look at their schedule, look at who they played, and look at their stats, and they're solid. They're solid offense, defense, special teams, and almost any other matchup, I would have picked it. But like I said earlier, I've got a good feeling about Oregon. I think Oregon is going to be able to navigate their injuries. I think they have some solid depth, and I think Oregon's going to be able to overcome them. I don't think this is going to be a game where Oregon puts up more than 35 points. I think it's going to be a lower scoring affair, which most people would say plays in Tech's favor. But I think Oregon's going to come out on top of this matchup as well.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana over Bama. It wasn't too long ago when Indiana was, the bottom of the conference. Scheduling them was essentially a bye week. And when I say not long ago, what, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
4 years ago? It wasn't that long ago. This coach that they have now, he's not a flash in the pan because he's done it 2 years now.
Yeah.
He's now at this point, being ranked number one heading into the CFP, he hasn't done that before. But Indiana's stout. I think watching Alabama play this year, there's been a few instances where there have just been broken plays from the onset of the snap. You don't see a whole lot of that with Alabama. There's been broken coverage plays. Don't see a whole lot of that with Alabama. But Indiana, man, they're just gonna pound it. They're gonna keep running it. It's Heisman winner.
Yeah.
I know there's a whole controversy about that and people comparing him to Cam Ward, who lost Travis Hunter. But you gotta give him credit where credit's due. He's a heck of a player. That'll be an interesting game. And if there is any game that I think I am most likely to get wrong, this is it. I think Bama could beat Indiana for sure. UGA over Ole Miss. As you could tell when I was talking about Ole Miss over Tulane, I don't have a whole lot of love for Ole Miss, especially with their coach being gone. And UGA, Kirby, man, I hate him. I hate Kirby. He is the king of halftime adjustments. But the thing is, I think this game's going to be over before halftime. I could see UGA heading into the locker room with a 17-point lead, and then they get the ball back, and it just being done. And that if Indiana Bama is the one I feel the least confident about, UGA over Ole Miss is the one I feel most confident about.
Okay, yeah.
Ohio State over Miami.
Man, that would be a good one.
I think it's
Just on the
going to be
helmet. Looking at the helmets, that's a great matchup. Classic 2002, I think, national championship.
Yeah, classic. History programs, they've got those high priority matchups in their history against each other. And it is going to bring a lot of eyes watching that game. Everybody's going to be watching it. Ohio State, heading into this season, everybody was saying just on paper, their roster is asinine. Absolutely full with talent. And, they were right. They were absolutely right. Julian Sand's been balling out all year. They have that loss to Indiana, but super close game. Was it 3-point game?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what separates the difference between number one and number two right now. Miami coming in, it's going to be interesting to see if Miami's defense can hang with Ohio State's offense. Personally, I don't, and I don't even really think this is going to be a field goal game. I could see this being a 10-point game, and I wouldn't be surprised about it in Ohio State's favor.
Okay. And we'll get quick. I know we're running a little short on time. We'll get quick into the semifinals and Natty. If you just want to give a quick little synopsis.
Yeah, quick on these. Semifinals, Oregon over Indiana. Same thing I've been saying. Oregon's just got that it factor. Indiana, solid, down to earth, down home team. They are going to be throwing some punches. But this one, I do see Oregon trying to make a more high score affair than their game over against Tech. And when if they're going to go into a shootout, Oregon just has a better history of winning in shootout games.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia over Ohio State. Oh man, this could be the Natty for the past 4 or 5 years, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a great game if it ends up being these two teams playing. Day Smart, it's they're prime. They're top of the prime, top of the top coaches, and I think it's really going to come down to who makes less mistakes, who is the more disciplined team.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I think UGA just has a little bit more maturity to it. Watching the games, Ohio State obviously has that maturity to it as well. But we're coming down to that final stretch, that make it or break it moment. I'm taking the dogs on this one.
Nice.
And then going to Natty, staying with the dogs,
facing his former boss.
Yeah. It's interesting. Always got to love those types of storylines.
Yeah.
Just shows how now more than ever how interconnected college football is. And we're going to be seeing that not only with the transfer portal, but now we're in the era of coaching portal as well. I think what we've seen this year is only the beginning of what we're going to see moving forward. But yeah, in the national championship, I have University of Georgia over Oregon. I think it's really going to come down to halftime adjustments. I don't have any issue saying, Oregon's going to be up 17-7 going into halftime. But I think Kirby comes out and he makes his adjustments, and he's able to pull out the natty on a game winning field goal. You know, that's romantic, but um, that's kind of how I see it playing out in my head. Now, my head, it's been argued.
A
Is
lot
it
of
tight?
a lot of people have your final four, different variations for the championship game. But that is a very popular pick, and I was tempted to kind of side with that as far as that Oregon, Georgia, um, Ohio State and Indiana kind of making the Final Four. But mine is a little bit different. First round, it's going to be the same. Oh, pictures up. There we go.
No,
See my bracket on there?
yep, got it.
First round looking like the same. I've got Oregon over JMU. Don't need to really talk much about that one. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I'm sorry. I think it's going to be a blowout. Bama over OU, like you said, I think it's going to be low scoring. I do have Alabama winning a 20-16 game over Oklahoma. Ole Miss over Tulane. I think that could be interesting. I think it could be close early, but I think Tulane, they might be able to get a couple scores. Maybe it's a 24-17 early, and then I think Ole Miss pulls away in the second half and ultimately covers. And I've got A&M over Miami. That was kind of a struggle pick for me. I just think that home field advantage, Kyle Field. I think Miami, the largest crowd they played in front of was Doak Campbell, and that's got a little bit over 50,000. They're going to be at a crowd of 100,000 people. Carson Beck, notorious for throwing picks when moments whenever he's needed the most. So I've got A&M pulling it out in a close one. I do have Texas Tech over Oregon, which is probably going to be a lot different than what some other people have, but that defense for Texas Tech, man, I think Oregon's gonna struggle like they did when they played Indiana in that matchup early in the year to score. I think it'll be close early, but I think they'll win. I do have Indiana over Bama. I think it's going to be a close game, maybe a 20-17. Mendoza just makes that play when he needs to, like he did versus Ohio State. Georgia, like you said, I think it'll be close early. Ole Miss has the offense, but I do think Georgia's going to be able to pull away. I think missing Lane Kiffin's gonna meet up with him at this point, and probably a huge surprise to everybody. I've got A&M over Ohio State.
All right, respect.
They're playing this game in Texas. I think they will pull the upset. Semifinals, I do have Indiana.
Can you talk a little more about that? I'm interested to hear your reasoning on that.
So it's about to run out in a minute, so we'll do another clip. Indiana over Texas Tech. I got Georgia beating A&M. I think they've got too much with Kirby Smart, and I have Georgia over Indiana in the national championship. Our time's about to run out here. We will bring Dustin back and talk a little more football because this has been great.
Yeah, let's get a part 2 to this sucker for sure.
And we'll keep breaking it down as the playoff goes on. But that'll be it here. Appreciate you guys. Like, subscribe. If you want to hear more content,